welcome or welcome back to my channel. For those who don't know me, my name is Katharine, and in today's video, I'm going to be talking about my June reading wrap-up. So in the month of June, I ended up reading 6 books, and that's pretty typical for what I read in a month. I usually read about 4, 5, 6-ish books per month, just depending on how much time I have to read and how fast I read during the time when I can read. But anyways, before I get into these books, I also wanted to preface that I made a goal for myself to read 1 nonfiction and 1 classic per month, just to kind of push myself out of my comfort zone of books I don't typically read but want to. So let's start out with the nonfiction. I had a physical copy of this, but I ended up actually selling it on Mercari, and that is The Weight of Glory by C.S. Lewis. I gave this 3 stars because of the pure fact that I did agree with a lot of the things that C.S. Lewis put in this book, but it almost came off as very like clinical and like sterile and like very bland and just overall like not like the most amazing Christian living nonfiction type book that I've ever read. But I did like agree with a lot of the things that he said, if that makes sense. Like, it wasn't a good book and it wasn't a bad book. It was just like, okay, like it was just very bland and a little bit boring, if I do say so myself. But I know C.S. Lewis is like a very profound, like prolific, like Christian author and like just general like apologetics, you know, person in the Christian realm. I believe he was also a professor at Oxford in England, if I'm not mistaken. I know he did teach at a university in England, so if that's the correct one, then awesome. If I'm incorrect, please let me know in the comments down below, but I'm pretty sure he taught at Oxford. But anyways, it's an apologetics type book, if you couldn't catch the drift of what this book is about. He writes a lot of apologetics type books that I have been trying to get through. He's written a lot of other books that I want to get to still. Like, by no means am I stopping reading his works. I just am probably realizing that he's not like my favorite Christian author of all time, if that makes sense. He definitely writes, like I mentioned, like almost like he's writing a textbook, because as I mentioned before, he was a professor. So I think that's kind of where he's coming from, and I understand like that his writing may come off as like you're reading a textbook because of the nature of like just what he did as a profession. But at the same time, like when I read nonfiction books, like I like to come into reading nonfiction almost reading them as if they're fiction books. Like, I love when nonfictions can like tell real life like as if it's like an actual story, if that makes sense. Like, I like to feel engaged when I'm reading the book, even if it is a true story and it's not fictionalized. I still like to feel like I'm, you know, being engaged with the book and the people that are being talked about in the nonfiction books that I read. So yeah, like I mentioned, I gave The Weight of Glory by C.S. Lewis 3 stars just because it wasn't good, it wasn't bad. I did agree with a lot of the stuff that was in the book, but I just found it sort of like bland and boring. I know that sounds really harsh, and I know a lot of people love C.S. Lewis, so please don't take this personally. It was just like not for me. Like, and I also read a few other of his books in the past before, and they were also not for me. But I'm still gonna try to continue reading more of his books because I know he has a lot more out there that are published, and I am looking forward to reading more of his books just to see if any of those resonate with me. When I rate nonfiction books, I like to rate them, especially when it comes to like Christian nonfiction, like as if it's something that I'm taking out of it, if that makes sense. So the higher that I rate a Christian nonfiction book means like the more I learn from that book, if that makes sense. I hope that does. But anyways, let's get on to the classic that I read in the month of June, and that is The Secret Garden by Frances Hodgson Burnett, and I really enjoyed this. I gave it 5 stars. I read A Little Princess by her when I was like a kid, probably when I was like in upper elementary or even like lower middle school. So I was definitely in like the correct age range to read A Little Princess when I did read it. And now I read The Secret Garden by her as an adult, and I'm so mad that I waited this long to read this because of the fact that it's just so whimsical and magical, and it definitely transported me back to the time in which I was a kid. It definitely gave me like nostalgic vibes. Even though I didn't read this as a kid, it definitely made me feel like a kid again. It's essentially about this girl, and her name is Mary. I'm gonna read somewhat off the back because I want to make sure I'm giving you all the details correctly. I'm just gonna paraphrase what's on the back. And basically she was living in India, and she's originally from England, but she is then sent to live with her uncle in this big manor in Yorkshire. And she's basically just like really determined to like be like very like gloomy and very like just hate her home that she's now living in Yorkshire, England. And she then like tries to explore the home, and she unlocks like certain like things within the home because it's very big, and she finds this secret garden, hence why the title of the book is called The Secret Garden. And it just like goes from there. Like you just follow her as like a very like curious young girl who starts off as like being very miserable, and then she goes on to like finding like the joy in her new situation. And I really enjoyed it. She makes friends along the way, and it's just a very whimsical, magical book. Like I mentioned before, I definitely recommend reading this if you can. It's definitely a classic, and I'm so glad I read it. And then the next 4 books that I'm going to talk about are sort of like my free-for-all books. They're also like within this like summer reading challenge that I'm doing for myself. The one book that I already talked about that was a part of my summer reading challenge was The Secret Garden, so I definitely checked that off of my list for some of the prompts on my summer reading challenge. I also want to talk about the next book that I read from my summer reading challenge, and that is One Italian Summer by Rebecca Serrell. I gave this 2 stars. It was not the best. I am actually gonna unhaul this, and I'm planning on selling it hopefully on Mercari, and if I can't sell it on Mercari, I'm just gonna probably bring it to like a free little library or a little free library, whatever that's called. I can never get the correct terminology for that right. But basically, this is about a girl, and she's married, and her mom dies, and she has, or had, I guess I should say, this really unhealthy relationship or attachment to her mother. She seemed to be very like attached to the hip to her mom, if that makes sense. Not even attached to the hip, but like just had this like very unhealthy like admiration for her mom, even though her mom wasn't a perfect person. And so when her mom died, like her whole like worldview and like perspective of life like just like collapsed. She ends up like literally like going on this vacation alone by herself that she was planning on going on with her mom before her mom died. And her husband even like offered to go on the vacation with her, but she was like, no, I don't want you to go with me. And she made this like huge deal about it, and like she's like, I want a divorce and this and that. And I'm like, girl, like you want a divorce just because like your mom died? I understand like it's a hard situation to go through. Like don't get me wrong, like I tear up at the thought of like my own mom dying, but like it's a part of life, and I'm not gonna like stop living my own life, if that makes sense, once my mom dies, you know what I mean? Like I know that sounds harsh maybe, but like this girl like just was so insufferable. So she ends up going on this vacation, right? And she is by herself, and there's some magical realism in this book that isn't really explained very well, and it's not even like understood that it is magical realism until like the very end of the book, which it just aggravated me because like I could have been enjoying this book so much more if like I understood what the heck was going on, because it was kind of confusing as to why like certain things were going on in this book. And if I had known that it was like a magical realism type situation going on, it would have made a lot more plot points make sense, if that makes sense. But anyways, a lot of like magical-ish type things go on. I don't want to like ruin the plot for you because otherwise that would be like spoilers, but there is one situation that I am going to mention which may come off as spoilery, so skip like 30 seconds into the future if you don't want to hear me talk about this. But anyways, there is cheating in this book, and I just don't appreciate cheating in books whatsoever. That's why I gave it 2 stars. But anyways, like, I just gave it 2 stars not just because of the cheating, but also because of the fact that, like, the plot was, like, confusing. Also, the main female character was super insufferable. Like I was saying, she, like, basically had this whole mental breakdown over her mom dying, and she wanted a divorce. And, like, she wasn't really in love with her husband. It's like, why did you even get married to him in the first place? But anyways, gave this 2 stars. Was not enjoyable for me at all. The only reason why I gave it 2 stars instead of 1 star, I would have given it 1 star. But the only reason why I bumped it up to a 2 star is for the pure fact that I could possibly see other people enjoying this for reasons I don't know. But, like, I know some people really do love this, and that's why it's so hyped up on, like, Book Talk and Booktube and Bookstagram and so forth. But yeah, I'm going to be unhauling this. Thankfully, actually, I am glad to be getting rid of this. The next book that I read that was also on my summer reading challenge list to fulfill some prompts on there was The Sisterhood of the Traveling Pants by Anne Brashers. I think that's how you pronounce her last name. If it's not how I pronounced it, please correct me down in the comments below. But essentially, I grew up watching this movie when I was like in middle school and high school. Really enjoyed the movie. Didn't realize that it was actually like based on books. So I decided to pick this up once I did realize it was based on books. And I really enjoyed it. I gave it 4 stars. So it's essentially, as you can tell by the title, about a pair of pants or jeans, to be more specific. And basically, this pair of jeans is supposedly like magical. I guess this can be considered like magical realism, but not really. I mean, it's just about this pair of jeans that like travels between like these 4 friends during a summer, and basically they send it to each other throughout the summer, and apparently these pair of jeans like fit every individual in this friend group, if that makes sense. Like, each friend has a very different body shape, and they even like describe that in this book. Not like in a shameful way, but the author really makes it clear, like in a non-insulting way, that each girl's body type is different. I mean, isn't that like what real life is? Like, no human or person's body is as the same as the next person's, if that makes sense. So it was just interesting that this pair of jeans like would fit this group of friends, and with them all having different body shapes and body types. So they end up like sending it to each other like throughout the summer as they're off doing their own things during the summer, because during the school year they all hang out, but during the summer they're off doing their own things. And they kind of took this sign that the jeans, the jeans, whatever you want to call it, they took that the jeans having fit everyone as like a sign that like these were like magical jeans or magical pants. So they thought that like if each girl wore them throughout the summer, that like good things would come. And as you learn throughout the book, like that's not really the case. Like, they're just jeans, you know? But it's fun kind of just following these like high school girls throughout their summers. It kind of brought me back to like when I was in high school. And although there are some like romantic aspects to this book, I didn't feel weird reading them. I oftentimes have a problem with like young adult romances because I often feel like a pedophile reading them. I know that sounds really weird, but like I have nieces and nephews who are in like middle school and high school, so when I read like young adult romances, like I oftentimes feel like really like weird reading about it because I'm like, this could be my niece or nephew. But anyway, let's get on to the next book that I read. And I apologize for the yelling in the background if you hear that. That is literally my mom just like being silly. Like she oftentimes is like a very like stereotypical like Sicilian Italian type mom. She's very loud. She doesn't yell in a mean way. She just yells in general because that's how she talks. So please excuse me or excuse her in the background. She just like is a Sicilian Italian mom who yells when she talks. It's me and my dad constantly have to tell her like, tone it down. But that's literally just how she talks. But anyways, the last book that I read was Summer of '69 by Ellen Hildebrandt. I also read this for my summer reading challenge because it fulfilled a few of the prompts in that. But basically, this is like a historical fiction. I would consider this woman fiction, or whatever that's called, like women's fiction, if that makes sense. It's like women's historical fiction. I don't know how to describe that. But basically it follows like three sisters in the summer of 1969. And essentially it follows these three sisters, and it has like romance in it, has a lot of different like things that they struggle with like their marriages or relationships and so forth. And it takes place actually on the South Shore of Massachusetts, mostly in like Nantucket and on Martha's Vineyard, which are two islands off the coast of Massachusetts, which is kind of cool because I am from Massachusetts, so it was kind of cool, interesting to hear about like towns and locations that I actually have been to. So I really enjoyed this book. I actually gave it 3 stars. It wasn't great, it wasn't bad, but I did enjoy it. I am going to be actually unhauling this book because, for those who don't know, I only keep books that are above 4 stars, like 4 stars and up. And I feel like someone else would really enjoy this book more than I did. I know Ellen Hildebrandt is like really known for her like summery beach reads, and this definitely like made me feel like summery and in like the beachy mood. Like I actually read this like outside a lot, like especially on the beach. I had a few beach days already, hence why I have a tan. And I read this on the beach and just outside in general, like even out on my deck at my house. So I enjoyed it, but hopefully someone else enjoys it more than me. The only thing that like I didn't really enjoy is it kind of came off as like really slow. And also like I didn't really like how many perspectives we got. Like there was 3 different people or sisters that we were following, and it just came off as very confusing at times. I'm like, wait, like who is this girl and who's that guy? And like the characters to keep up with, like it just came off as very confusing to me. But I enjoyed it overall, but it wasn't like the best read I've ever had. It was just like a very light, fluffy read for the summer. I mean, it dealt with some very hard subjects, don't get me wrong. So it does have some like stuff in it that might trigger you, so definitely check the trigger warnings if you're curious about that. But like overall, it was like a light, fluffy read that reminded me of summer. It made me feel like summer was here, so that's why I gave it 3 stars at the end of the day. But anyways, those are all 6 books that I read. Oh wait, I didn't talk about the 6th book that I read. Wait, so I want to talk about One Golden Summer by Carly Fortune, or Fortune. I don't know how to pronounce her last name. I gave it 2 stars, unfortunately. Much like One Italian Summer by Rebecca Serrell, it was just very like unenjoyable for me. The only reason why I gave it 2 stars instead of 1 star is because I could see why other people like it, and I know a lot of people do like that book. But I read this for a book club actually. There's this book club that I went to in Boston Common actually, and I took the train in, and it was a lot of fun, like just being around other people who love reading books, but it was just like not enjoyable for me because it was about essentially two 30-something-year-olds who are at this lake for the summer, and they end up knowing each other from like when they were in like high school, but they reconnect when they're, you know, in their 30-somethings, and I'm almost 30-something. I'm gonna be 29 in July, and they both just seemed like high schoolers. Like the way that they interacted with each other and like how sexual they were towards one another was just like not enjoyable. I don't know why I didn't DNF it, but the only reason why I pushed through is because of the fact that I was reading it for a book club, and I didn't want to not read it for the book club, if that makes sense. But like I, over the past like 9 or 10 months, have transitioned from not reading any spicy books. I have been mostly reading like Christian fiction or clean fiction. And although like I don't mind having sex in books, like when it comes to like having like spicy stuff in books, I don't like that. Like I definitely feel and believe that there is like a difference between having sex in books and having it be spicy. There's like a very fine line that's drawn between like just mentioning that they had sex and like making it basically corn, if you get my drift. But anyways, I just didn't appreciate it because it definitely felt like corn, if that makes sense to you, and I just didn't appreciate that like whatsoever. It was just basically them like lusting after each other. But yeah, I just felt like it was like them just like lusting after each other, and it's just like not something I appreciate in books. And I am so thankful that I didn't buy the book. I actually listened to it on audio, and I'm so glad that I did, because like I actually even got it from Libby, so I didn't even pay for the audiobook. I got it for free. So I'm just so glad that I didn't end up paying for it, because like I would have been really mad at myself. And I definitely will not pick up any more of her books, because if they're anything similar to this, then I'm not gonna like any of her other books. But yeah, those are officially all the 6 books that I read in the month of June. I'm really looking forward to reading in the month of July, but yeah, that's what I have for you today. Make sure to do all of the YouTube things that you know how to do, like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye!